A month ago, I was at the home of a relative. I was there to watch my beloved Fighting Irish open their football season. There were over 20 people at the party, and yet I was the only one that watched the whole game. What went wrong? After pondering this question at length, I decided to create a speech to teach people how to create a successful football game watch to prevent this tragedy from ever happening again. There are 4 phases to a successful football game watch. It all starts with the preparation phase. You want to start out choosing teams that are closely opposed so you can showcase the opposing team's strengths and weaknesses and the strategies. The next phase is to invite people that have a predilection for college football. Optimally, you want people that share your passion for the sport and people that will refrain from talking while the game is in session. Obviously, you want to exclude small children when selecting people to attend a game watch. In very rare circumstances, you may wish to invite someone who does not share your predilection for who should win the game. If you do, however, you must very carefully choose this person. It must be someone who can tactfully express their differences. In practice, this is very difficult to do. The next phase, once you've selected the people and the game, is to select the proper, or to do your proper research for the game. It is best to know your own team's strategies, coaches, and players. Having a sheet listing the roster with numbers is very helpful. Lamination is nice, but it's not necessary. To really enjoy the game, it's good to know the opposing team also, their strengths and weaknesses, etc. Now, in order to do this, you might have to do some research on the opponent's website, on your own website, whatever, to try to find out more about the opposing team. Exceptional statistics are always helpful. Now, if you happen to come across some amusing instances where the other team didn't display exemplary behavior, that is always welcome. And bonus points are awarded if those particular incidents lead to multi-game suspensions and/or jail time. The next phase is to select the proper food and beverages for a party. This is an often misunderstood science. People just don't spend enough time on it. The key is to select food and beverages that enhance the game watching experience without detracting from it. Optimally, you want to select foods that you can eat while keeping both eyes glued on the game. For example, let me give you some examples on how this would work. Beer, chips, pretzels, good. Spaghetti, thin soups, flaming shots, bad. Although frequently served, nachos can be very dangerous. To minimize the possibility of nacho shrapnel affecting your guests or their clothing, it is best to serve them before the game or at halftime. So that's the first phase. The next phase is the pregame. It's best to arrange the guests so that they have an optimal viewing angle of the television, if at all possible. Preferably less than 30 degrees off center. It's also important to arrange the food and beverages in an organized manner. Don't make your guests search for the bottle opener. It's also very important to have the guests, if at all possible, arrive before the game starts. What you want to avoid are situations such as the following. It's 3rd and 11. 5 wide set. The ball's snapped. The quarterback sets up the pass and the doorbell rings, totally removing your concentration from the game. Don't let this happen to you. Have the guests arrive early. It's also important to familiarize the guests with the big 3 and where they're located. Number 1, the food. Number 2, the beverages. And number 3, the restrooms. It's also important to familiarize the guests with the proper rules for football etiquette. Number 1, any food or beverage brought to the party becomes communal property, to be shared by everyone of legal age. If you don't want to share, stay home. Number 2, any conversation while the play is in progress should directly relate to that play. Number 3, never, ever walk in front of the TV while the play is in motion. And number 4, if you can't contain your food and beverages during the excitement of the game, you may be asked to leave. There will be no refunds issued, and any food or beverage you brought will be forfeited. And one thing to remember is that in spite of how well you plan, you can't always control your environment and the guests. So it's a good idea to record the game to capture those plays that you might not be able to see yourself. The next phase is during the game itself. Now, enthusiasm during the game is always welcome, but it can be taken too far. For example, high-fiving and fist-pumping is good. Cheering at the top of your lungs when your team wins the coin toss is bad and may result in an excessive celebration penalty. It's also important to not obstruct other people's view of the game while the game is in progress. When the game comes to halftime, it's often not properly observed the etiquette of what should happen then. At halftime, it is appropriate to deconstruct the two teams' offenses and defenses, and to talk about the coaches and strategies employed by each team. Please limit yourself to 1 expletive per player or team. Note that if all of the participants at the game watch share the same predilection for who should win the game, there should be no such limit of expletives expressed towards the opposing team's players, their team, or their fans. As a last resort, it may be acceptable to watch the halftime show, but it's not a first choice. And if the halftime show consists of a medley of tunes performed by a marching band of Barry Manilow or the like, avoid it at all costs. Post-game. The goal is to minimize the disruption to the fans and the venue. So please bring all of your food and beverages to a central collection area, preferably the kitchen. It's okay to deconstruct the opposing defenses and offenses, but please keep your comments succinct and on point. Whining and crying are not acceptable. In summary, the 4 phases to a successful game watch are: number 1, preparation. Select the appropriate players, game to watch, people to invite, food and beverages to serve, and venue. Number 2, pregame. Make sure that everyone is familiar with the rules of the house and where everything is located. Number 3, during the game. Enjoy the game watching experience without incurring penalties for unsportsmanlike conduct. And number 4, post-game. Minimize the impact to the venue and the other participants. And remember, the goal is to go out there and have fun.